Hi, pretty girl. We are here for another training. We are here for another training. Stop now. I can follow along with the comments. I got my gal, Phoebe LaRue here. Let me show you. She's gotten so big. Here she is. This is her. She's not as noisy as what Maverick is, but he's a super duper cuddler, which we love here. All right, now we got to get to business. Okay. Let's get started here. I always like knowing who's here. So if you're here live, just pop into the comments and just let me know. Like, hey, Cindy, you're not talking to yourself, or you're not talking to your dog Phoebe. You're talking to me. So just pop into the comments and say, hey, I'm here with you on a virtual training, virtual lunch with you. Even if you're here on the replay, it's really great because then I get to know who the imperfect action takers are, that are not only listening but actually, taking notes and doing something with this as well. Again, these trainings are about taking like broader topics and then making them make sense for you and then bringing them into practical terms for you as well. So how to make sense of it in your daily life, not just conceptually as well. The advantage to joining live is that you get to ask me all kinds of questions as well. So that's your opportunity to drop them into the comments. And just a reminder that trainings now are only here for a limited time and they're not always going to be available in the group as well. So you want to catch them while you can. So what are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about this thing called stress. This is part two of part two of a two-part training, I guess. And what we're going to look at is what to do when stress is blocking weight loss. And if you didn't catch part one, I'm going to give you a little bit of a recap there. But it's really understanding what is stress and is there a potential for it to be blocking weight loss or not. And stress is also synonymous with the hormone that gets a lot of social media attention, and that is cortisol. And so we're kind of talking about those two things together. So if training number one made you think, okay, that explains a lot, but now what? This is a good thing. This means that you're in the right place, because the answer is not necessarily to remove all stress. You can't quit your job. Maybe you can quit exercising, but I don't recommend that. Life isn't always going to be peaches and roses and all things calm and butterflies. That's not real life. The goal is not less stress. The goal is to less load on your system. And that comes from changing your inputs, not avoiding life, right? So before we get into what to do, I want to ground us in what we covered in the first training, the part one of this series, because if you skip part one, you're still in the right place. It's still going to make sense. But here's the takeaway from part one. This isn't just hormones, but it's not just you either, right? What changes after 40 isn't just effort, it's your buffering capacity, which we covered in one. So what does that really mean? Is estrogen is used to help absorb the stress. And as that buffer thins, right, because our hormones are changing in perimenopause and menopause, that same life, the same workouts, the same eating patterns cost your body more. So cortisol is not the problem. You do need cortisol. You tend to have like more cortisol first thing in the morning, right? It helps you wake up. It helps you get through the hard days. It helps you function when life is demanding. The problem is when your body is never allowed to turn it down. So when you're always rushing, you're always under fueled, maybe because you're just under eating because you feel like that's what you need to do in order to lose weight, always tired. And sorry, I do want to reverse, is like you do need a calorie deficit in order to lose weight. It's just when you are under eating to a point where there's other side effects of you doing that for a longer period of time or to too deep of an extent there. And then so it's when you're under fueled, you're always tired but still pushing. Someone will also describe like wired but tired, and always handling. When cortisol stays high for too long, here's what actually happens. So your blood sugar becomes harder to control. So maybe it's like, why do I always crave something sweet after I'm done eating, even though I ate to satisfied or even though I'm full? Or it's like, how come after I eat, I have like some like crashes in energy after I'm done eating? Those are just examples outside of just like your blood work being able to show you that as well. Your appetite cues and get really messy. So it's like having a hard time understanding, is it a craving? Is it a hunger? Is it emotional? Am I satisfied? Am I not? Do I actually feel hunger as well? So that all gets messy. Your digestion slows down for most people. There's two different ways, and generally it is slows down. So you have the person who can't go, so will spend, when their stress is really high or cortisol is elevated for a long period of time, is like they'll spend 3 5 days without going to the bathroom. So there's that person where it really slows down, and oftentimes that comes with more like distension through your belly, more belly bloat, more gas, indigestion, acid reflux, all those kinds of things. And then you have the person who, this is my stress response, is that I'll go multiple times throughout the day, and that generally we feel like, hey, that's not a slow digestive system, but it can still be a sign of a slow digestive system because they're not healthy bowel movements. It's an overreactive system as a response to your stress. Your sleep gets lighter. So that's where some women might say they get the 2 to 4 a.m. wake up call as well. Or it's like I have a good time falling asleep and not staying asleep. Or it's like I'm not getting into that deep sleep as much. And your recovery drops, meaning like, hey, maybe I try to work out and it's now my legs like take a longer time to like feel back to normal. Like, that I'm not thinking about my knee and my legs. I'm not feeling them as much as I used to. And then weight slows down, or for some people it stops. So I do want to caveat that it's not saying that when cortisol is up or when stress is up that you can't lose weight. The example I always use on these trainings is the example of planning a road trip. Let's say you're going up north. It's like once you have all of these different things in the way, it's like more detours, more traffic jams, more construction, more slow traffic. So what are those things? Well, if stress is higher, you can think about, okay, am I still going to get to my destination? I can still get there, but it's going to be a little bit slower to get there or a little bit harder to get there because now I have more detours along the way, those detours being cortisol or my stress levels. Or it's like now I have inflammation, or now I'm not going to the bathroom. All of those things, you can still get there. It's just now why they don't add up the same is because you're hitting more of those things along the way, even though you can still get to the destination too. So I do want to caveat and say that because cortisol doesn't magically create fat. It's not like cortisol then produces more fat or changes into fat or anything like that. But because your body is running kind of what we call in survival mode, and fat loss is not the priority. But it can happen at the same time, but it's not in the number one time slot. You want it to be in the number one time slot, but what is actually in the number one time slot is clearing out the cortisol, clearing out the stress load, getting the body functioning kind of rightly so. So this is why pushing harder actually backfires. Not because effort is wrong, right? Well, but effort could be misplaced, right? So you could be doing all of the things, to a greater extent or even more, but that effort is going into the wrong thing because you're not actually looking at the stress load as well. I'll give you a real-time example of a coaching client is like, hitting all of her workouts. That wasn't a problem. It was like 6 days a week. She could do the workouts, she could do the walks, she could do all of those things. But there was a lot of stuff that was happening in her home life with her kids, with her job, and everything else. That was a high stress load. We were starting to see sleep impacted. We were starting to see cravings go up. So what did we need to do? We needed to scale back on our workouts. We needed to do more like intentional walks where it was like more slower versus like trying to like get our heart rate up. We needed to pull back on the intensity of our workout, so not so often, less often as well. And then we needed to really settle into like breathing exercises to calm her nervous system. Journaling met her with where she was at, and then really prioritizing her sleep as well, all while balancing her nutrition. And now we're starting to see the weight loss calm down, which is like counterintuitive to what she thought she needed to do. more meant should be greater, but we weren't looking at the whole stress load on the system as well. So that was the value of kind of coaching for her. So that's kind of why, sometimes pushing harder backfires. And again, it's just misplaced effort. It's not to say you aren't putting in a lot of effort. It's just sometimes we are putting the effort into the wrong place and not zooming out to look at the bigger picture. So what's in your control is not eliminating stress. It's just lowering the daily strain on your body. So things like eating consistently instead of skipping meals or trying to compress all of your macros or calories into a certain window of time, training in a way that builds you up instead of draining you, because as much as training and exercise is good for the body, it's so good for the body, and we definitely need it. We definitely need to push outside of our comfort zone to get there. It's still a stressor on our body, so we want to manage the load and actually recovering, not just stopping. For a lot of women like her, it was like she had a story about taking a rest day. I was lazy, it was not productive, I don't feel good. There was a lot of mental dialogue happening, and so it was like, how do we reframe the recovery, the days off, the rest breaks in between different exercises, how to reframe that as to being, something actually needed, something really productive. So these inputs tell your body we're okay, we're safe, right? So even though you're just like, yeah, Cindy, like my life is so stressful, there's nothing I can do to change it. There are certain elements that you can do to make sure that you're not adding more fuel to the fire, that you're actually keeping the fire in a controllable manner. So there are those things that we can look at. And sometimes we don't necessarily see them as part of the puzzle. I'll give you an example of someone saying like, okay, should I be fasting? Well, that's a really hard question to answer if you should be fasting, right? Is because I want to look at the entire stress load of the body. And if that adds more stress to you to try and shorten your window, get it all in, and it adds more stress in terms of where you are in your cycle and your hormones and things like that, then fasting is not the bigger picture. But you see fasting as a way to reduce your calories. And so it's only looking at it in this narrow window and not looking at it in the extended window. Is that making sense? So this is where change starts. So when we talk about what to do today, we're not fixing hormones. We're changing the inputs that tell your body whether it's safe to adapt again. That's the lens from everything that follows through for today. Okay. There's no such thing as fixing hormones. There are things that we can do that are within our control, with nutrition, with supplementation, with stress load, with sleep, with lifestyle, with mindset, all of those things, those variables that we can do that help our hormones play nicer. Sometimes not always so nice, but nicer than, an angry rage all the time where you feel like they're working against you. So here's a shift most people need to make. Your body doesn't need a calmer life. It needs a better recovery signals. You don't lose weight by convincing your body it's safe with words. You lose weight by showing it consistently through your behavior. So I know consistency is something that gets talked about a lot in the health and fitness industry, right? You need to be consistent. But how often do you hear about it from this angle, right? Is okay, if I'm consistent at those things, I reduce the stress load. And when I reduce this stress load, that increases my body's safety signal. And when my body feels safe, then things start to flow from there. So we're going to work with 3 levers in today's training. We're going to look at fuel, we're going to look at training, and we're going to look at recovery, and we're going to break those 3 down. Again, if you're here live, this is a great opportunity for you to ask questions. If at any point during this, you're like, then let me know. Or if at any point you're like, oh my God, that just like light bulb went off, let me know that too. Then I know how to tailor future trainings as well to meet you with where you're at. Okay, so lever 1 is fuel as a stress regulator. So what do we mean? So food is not just calories, food is also information. So one of the fastest ways women unknowingly drive stress up is by eating inconsistently, right? And maybe that's because it's like, you're more rushed, your days are more unpredictable, you hate meal planning, you're like, the last thing I think about is food, the first thing to go out the window is food. So eating inconsistently. So one of the things we work with clients is we work at, eating in a certain cadence or rhythm, right? Until we figure out, okay, what's the thing that naturally feels good for you? And that comes with skipping meals too. Oftentimes there's this thought that if I skip meals, then it means less calories. Woohoo! So that means weight loss. But skipping, your body likes more of the predictability and the rhythm as well. So skipping meals can mean less calories if you're not making it up somewhere else. But again, if we're looking at it through that lens of recovery, then skipping meals is working against that, right? Under eating early and overeating later at night. So you got to think when you wake up in the morning, your cortisol is up higher. That's what helps you get up in the morning, right? And so then you have this thing called circadian rhythm. It's based on the clock. And if you noticed after any time change, you're like, how does 1 hour ahead or behind make me feel like garbage? How come it just makes me feel so, oh, right? And it's because of this thing called circadian rhythm. So basically, it's like, hey, and during the day, you kind of your circadian rhythm is like, let's say upregulate, like it's really, really high. And so that's an opportunity to, eat. And then as you get closer to bed, your circadian rhythm kind of down regulates because it's preparing you for sleep. And that's when you need less calories, particularly when there's not a lot of movement happening at night. And so what a lot of women will say is, I'm not hungry in the morning. I'm usually not hungry until 12 or 1. But then when you look at, if it was a piece of paper and I was looking at all of their food through the day and I was divide the paper in half for AM to PM, you could start to see that a lot of their calories are made up in the PM, not in the AM, when they have more of an opportunity to burn or use that energy as well. And then cutting carbs while training hard, particularly in perimenopause and menopause, because they're all part of this thing that we want to do is we want to balance our hormones and feel really good in perimenopause and menopause, and we need them as part of our recovery tool as well. So this tells your body resources are unpredictable. The body works better when it is predictable. It's the same thing with any flippin' relationship that you have. You do better at work when it's predictable. You do better in your marriage when it's predictable. You do better with your kids and their parenting and everything if it's predictable. It's the same thing when it comes to food. It's the same thing to exercise. It's the same thing with your biology as well. So here's the simple correction. You can eat 3 anchored meals, not snack all day. We talked about this when we talked about digestion, how when you're grazing throughout the day, how that disrupts digestion because you never get that rest and digest part of the digestion part. And it's not fasting until till noon. It's meals. It's looking at 3 anchored meals. I have one client right now that I'm coaching and she has a really hard time with breakfast. And so it's just for her, it's one of those already to drink protein shakes because that works for her, and then she has her coffee that works for her, and she's actually like, man, it's cut down my nighttime snacking, it's cut down the need to have snacking when I've done that. And that one just works for her because she doesn't feel hunger in the morning and has a hard time digesting food in the morning, and then that works for her. So what you want to have at each meal is you want to have a solid protein source. So just to recap, a full serving of protein is the size of your palm, the thickness of your palm as well. So when you have your 1 egg in the morning, that is not 1 serving of protein. It is not the thickness plus you have the egg yolk. That's a fat. That's not a protein. So you want to look at it this way. Another way is like 1 cup of plain Greek yogurt, 1 cup of cottage cheese, 4 egg whites, 30 grams of protein. You can use all kinds of different measurements there. But when women tell me that they are prioritizing protein, they think that because I have a protein source at each meal, it means that I'm getting my protein. But when I look at it and it's like you have 1 egg, or it's like you have one of those small Greek yogurts or things like that, or you're eating nuts or hummus, which are more fats than they are protein, they're not getting enough of your protein. So have a solid protein, have a starchy carb. A starchy carb is probably like the size of your fist or half a cup. So that can be your fruits, because fruits are carbs. It could be any of your grains as well. And so some fats, especially like chia, flax, and avocado, because those are going to get your digestive system going, getting a bit more regular. But it's also gonna, they kind of expand. Like if you ever put them in water and let them sit, they get thicker, thicker, thicker. That's what happens with chia pudding, for example, right? And so that's the same idea that kind of happens in your stomach. And then you can add some veggies for extra fiber. And veggies aren't going to add extra calorie load to your body, but they certainly are going to make you feel the volume like you're eating a lot. And they're certainly going to make you feel a lot more satisfied. So eating consistently lowers that stress more than perfection ever will, more than skipping meals, that sort of thing. So the first lever that you want to do to move into the recovery, so your body safety signals goes up, is eat 3 meals. And we kind of went over why that's important and what that should look like. Is that making sense? Give me a heart, give me a thumbs up, whatever that is to help me understand like, hey, that makes sense. That's going to be one of my focuses moving into this week, is just really focusing on, what would need to happen for me to make 3 meals a commitment, a priority for this week, and then decide from there. So lever 2 is training that builds, not drains. So exercise, again, is a stressor on the body. That's not bad. It just needs to be paired with recovery and the fuel, right? So if every workout leaves you wiped, so here's the thing is that most people do need to exercise. They need to go from doing nothing to doing something, from going from doing something to doing something with intention, and then going from something with intention to something with intention and intensity as well, right? Most women, what they'll do is they'll go from nothing to intensity and skip all of the steps in between. Well, you have to prove that you can be consistent before you can layer on the next things. So when you are then coming into this next phase where it's like, okay, I'm more consistent now, I'm looking at muscle building, okay, I'm looking at intensity, then you want to make sure you have the recovery and fuel with it. So if every workout leaves you wiped, we don't want that. Some can leave you wiped for sure, but not all of them. If they leave you sore for days, then it probably like, hey, do we need to look at hydration? Do we know like supplementation, like a fish oil or magnesium or anything like that? Are you eating your protein as well and your carbohydrates? Are you eating enough as well? And are you prioritizing stretching after your damn workouts, right? So we want to look at what is happening with soreness throughout the day. And when you are really high stress or when your digestion system is not working well, you will feel that soreness or that inability to recover more so. Hungrier but not stronger as well as another one, and more inflamed, meaning like my rings are hard to take off. I have like, if my workout gloves, I have more of a ring around my wrists, my socks, that sort of thing. Or it's like beginning of the day, I look, or actually when I wake up, I feel like I'm like a swollen kind of fish. And then at the end of the day, it kind of goes down. So guess what's happening? It's a kind of a stress pile that's happening. For this season, training should build strength because we understand the value of muscle. Muscle is the organ of longevity, and it's gone are the days of needing to be skinny. Gone are the here are the days of like, flip, I need to be here for my grandkids, get on and off the floor, be an active grandma, age gracefully, and enjoy that next phase of my life, right? Leave something in the tank. So yes, we talk about when we work out, we don't want to leave reps in reserve. We want to push, because the muscle needs to have something to push towards. But also it's that we're not just looking at, I'm so gassed out by the end of every workout. And then something that doesn't require you to like, okay, I worked out, but now I need 2 days off to like get rid of this soreness in my body. So what can this look like? Strength training with rest. So, if you're not doing strength training, maybe it looks like 2 days a week, then 3 days a week, then maybe it progresses to 4 days a week where it's like you're doing total body workouts there as well. Or, and then maybe it looks like, walking, if your stress load is up, it's not about, sweating or calorie burns or anything. It's just about getting in movement. And it's about the mind as well. And then lower intensity cardio days. So for some of you who are watching, it's like maybe you do endurance. That's one way of doing it. It's looking at the ratio of that when we're trying to look at it through a recovery lens or like that stress lens. But it's also looking at, just, longer walks or hikes or that sort of thing. But it's also looking at so that we're not just doing interval training. You're kind of teaching your body it can adapt again. So that's what training would look like. That's the lever there. So if you're like, well, there's nothing I can do to change my stress. It is what it is. I just got to wait this thing out and then I can focus on me. Well, no, I hope that what's coming through for you is that there are some levers you can start pulling so that your stress load, you're not adding gasoline to the fire, right? Lever 3 is recovery. Your nervous system understands. So recovery is not just sleep, it's signals that say, you're not in danger. We don't need to stay on the edge. So, here are three is one sleep structure, like same bedtime range. I usually like to give my clients within an hour range, same wake up range, and that means on the weekends as well. I don't know if you've noticed is sometimes when you sleep in on the weekends, then Monday it's like a full-fledged drag to get your ass out of bed on Monday, but if we kept the same sleep cycle, so for some women who want to do the sleep in, what we'll do is same bedtime, same wake up time on the weekends, but now you're just like hanging around or lounging around. Let's say it's 2 hours earlier than what you usually do. For those 2 hours, you might be reading, you might be watching TV, you might be just easing into the morning as well. Doesn't mean that you have to then begin your day as well. Plus, we're working on things like screen time before bed. How do you get your mind and your body to know that you're getting ready for bed? What are the things that you do? For some women, it's their skincare routine. For some women, it's, a sauna. For other ones, it's a shower. For other ones, it's reading. For other ones, it's meditating. For other ones, it's the audio book, whatever that sleep routine looks like. And again, it's downshifting before bed. So it screens off earlier, lights lower, body cues it's safe to power down. I have this one client who has a really hard time with rest. Rest is seen as not useful, not productive. So it is a mindset thing that we need to kind of there. Even just, I have another client who, when sick, has a hard time taking time off, and then gets into this, like, I need to make up because I've been off for 3 days of my workout. So there's that. There's all mindset components that come with this as well, that are part of that nervous system regulation. But there's also, the thought that if I'm doing social things, that's my downtime. If I'm hanging out with friends or going out on a date night, those are all things to shift your nervous system, particularly if you feel really safe and comfortable around those people. It brings you life and joy. But that is also part of the recovery of your nervous system, but not the full story of your recovery system. There's many other layers as well. So and then you can also look at it as micro things throughout the day. So for some, we'll do a mind body scan. For some, it's a deep breathing exercise. For some, it's like I have one client who's working on one singular task. 5 minutes a day, where they can't be multitasking. It's like if they're watching TV, it's just watching TV. They can't do anything, and it's just getting the body to train. It's like, I'm safe, I'm okay, it's 5 minutes, I can do this one thing for that as well. So putting it all together, how do you do that without kind of feeling overwhelmed, right? You are not doing all of this at once. Basically, if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, I'm starting to understand from part one and part two of this training, I'm starting to understand this is the gap. I'm in a DIY approach with this as well. Then you want to choose 1 to 3 based on your capacity. So here are your options. Is one for fuel. Maybe it's for fuel, you're going to eat breakfast balanced with some protein. So I gave you an example of my one client who just cannot stand food in the morning, who has a hard time with that. Maybe you're going to focus on it's 3 meals, 3 balanced meals in that you're going to eat. Or maybe it's you're going to add a carb back to a meal where you removed it. So those are 3 examples around fuel. What could you do around training? So you could drop one high intensity workout. You can add rest in between sets. And I know that this competes with, I only have a limited amount of time, so I want to use my time effectively. So more is better. And replace maybe one session with like just a gentle walk or a gentle yoga even. And then recovery is, can you commit to a consistent bedtime? Can you put like 5 minutes where maybe you're working on that singular task? Maybe your feet are up, maybe you're doing a mind body scan or a breathing exercise. And then it's looking at that bedtime routine and what that looks like. So you can pick what feels really doable for you with where you're at. You might think, well, what's the point? Because it's not going to move the needle enough. But if you really let's say you nailed eating breakfast, and then you can layer on the next one, then this does add up, right? It's like that compound effect that happens with money, it happens here. So you do need to give it a little bit of time. And often the first changes are better sleep, less bloating, steadier energy, fewer cravings. So fat loss happens when your daily inputs stop telling your body it's under constant demand. That's behavior, not hormones alone. Said another way, fat loss responds to patterns. Change the patterns and the body responds. That's normal, and that's the order. So if you're listening to this and thinking, I understand this, but I struggle to apply it consistently, that's not a personal failure. That's a support gap, and this training gives you direction. It doesn't replace personalization or accountability. So if you ever want to help sorting out which levers matter most for your body, you can reach out and ask questions at any time. No pressure. Just know that support exists. So just before we kind of head off this training, I just want to leave you with, you don't need more. You need to know what lowers load first, and that's how progress starts moving forward. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope that this helped you make sense. In part one and part two helped you make sense of the whole stress cortisol thing that is getting all kinds of social media attention, and maybe that you're questioning around, and then looking at what's within your capacity to change change the things that you might be doing that are contributing to that overall stress load and helping you bring it down. That was kind of my goal today. I always love it when women pop up into the comments and tell me, this helped make sense of this. This is the question that I have, or this is what I'm going to do as a result of listening to today's training. Nothing changes if you just listen, only if you take action. I'm Coach Cindy signing off.